Preston, and TV personalities Kurt Loder and Dick Cavett. Kurt, let me come back to you. We just heard Tony Blair, the British Prime Minister, commenting on the incredible influence of the Beatles, and really they were one of the biggest influences on all of music.
That's true.
Right.
I mean, no one has ever, they had charisma, they came along at the right time, they had an incredible harmonic sense, they changed music in ways that has never since been changed again. Who knows in the future. But I think George Harrison has been sort of underestimated because if you look at his solo work, it's very harmonically complex. If anyone's ever tried to follow along the songs in chord books, they're very, very tricky. And he was, what may have been a fad in the 60s for sort of Eastern religion has served him to the end of his life, and I think allowed him to accept the end of his life very graciously. I think that's something to really admire.
It was Schumann that Leonard Bernstein made the comparison to his music to. He was so earnest in ways, and people said to me, you might have a long 90 minutes with him and kind of humorless, but they were completely wrong. I just remembered now, when you went to commercial, the commercials come up on the prompter with lights. He was seated so he could see them come up before I did. And he kept pulling this thing on me. We'd be talking, he would be talking, and then he'd say, now, Dick, let's talk about that old mattress of yours. And he was reading the commercial. Drove me crazy, but it also made me laugh.
The sense of humor, right?
Yeah. Really
Billy Preston, I'd like to ask you about an incredible experience that you had with George Harrison, who became your good friend, not only someone you worked musically with, but he became a friend. In 1974, you accompanied George Harrison to the White House, and I believe we've got a picture or some video of that. Let's take a look. Do we have that picture?
Yes, that was... That was quite an event.
There you are. I believe that's you with a huge afro, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's me.
And what was that day like?
It was an incredible day. We had just finished a concert there in Washington, and the president's son was there, and he invited us to have lunch in the family quarters at the White House. And I believe that was the first time any rock artist had been in the White House, in the family quarters at least anyway.
Billy, a lot of people credit you for making the Beatles act nicer around each other. At the point where you became involved with them, the late 60s, they were getting ready to break up. Maybe not anybody knew it at that time, but they said they acted nicer when you were around.
Well, that's nice to hear. Well, I was excited. I was thrilled just to be there. So I guess my excitement kind of sparked them, you know, sparked them up. It was just a gas. When I got there, we started jamming and reminiscing on old songs and old times, and it was a gas. It was just wonderful to be around them. In a room with all four of them, it was a glow in the room whenever they were all together.
Did you see the breakup coming?
Yes, I did. I used to sit in the Beatles' office, and I'd hear discussions about different things, and, you know, it kind of broke my heart because, you know, I always, you know, thought and wished that and hoped that they would, you know, everything was all right with them in their business. But unfortunately, it wasn't true. And so it was kind of hurtful to see it all kind of die out. And I saw it coming. In fact, you know, I used to talk with George, and he was kind of fed up with everything, and it was sad.
Kurt, what influence do you think the Beatles' breakup had on music?
It made the whole world sad, I think. I mean, you had this wonderful thing, and suddenly it was lost. It was a terrible, terrible thing.
And they all went on to have their various careers.
They went on to have their various careers, but they could never be what they were when they were all together. They had something together that was more than the sum of its parts.
And maybe that's what made the magic of the Beatles.
That was the magic of it. It's true.
Yeah.
They all had their moments, though.
Let's not forget to thank the tobacco companies who helped make this day possible.
Let's not forget to thank the tobacco industry.
He died of throat cancer from smoking.
Well, he died of a brain tumor, I think.
Well, that was metastasized, I think, wasn't it? From the...
You know, we're talking about his life and times and his death, and it seemed that he had achieved some kind of a spiritual satisfaction toward the end of his life. And Billy, I want to direct that question to you. When was the last time you talked with George, and did he truly seem to be at peace?
Yes, he was at peace for a long time. You know, I hadn't seen him for about 8 years. Well, it was during the time I was doing Ringo Starr's All-Star Band tour, and we had talked and reminisced. But he had always seemed at peace with himself, and, you know, and he'd always had a strong spiritual belief, and he was just a wonderful guy, you know, just so strong. And I know that, I know he's at peace now.
And what he's
His
been
spirit will
through,
always be with us.
my God, people accuse him of paranoia after John was killed, thinking people are going to attack. And then that nightmare of having a guy come into the house,
right,
stab him, and somebody, they asked him, was it a burglar? And he said, well, he wasn't a burglar, but he certainly wasn't there auditioning for the Flying Milburys,
right,
which was
the
an
traveling
act he had put
Milburys.
together. The Flying Milburys, was
Right.
that it?
The traveling Wilburys.
Traveling
but you were
Wilburys,
close.
that's it.
Kurt, I'll give you.
I got 80% on that.
Well, you did. Kurt, I'll give you the final word.
I think we should all learn something from George Harrison and not fear death and not fear the end of life and see that it is moving on to another plane and accept it gracefully. I think it's just the greatest thing he's given to people.
Kurt Loder, Dick Cavett.
I just like to say, keep the family in prayer. Everyone keep the family in prayer during this time.
Indeed. Billy Preston, thank you so much for joining us. Dick Cavett and Kurt Loder. Excellent discussion. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
When Fox